started a company in my basement at a very scary time. We were going around pitching to people and no one wanted to invest. It had $1.5 billion worth of real estate and it all blew up spectacularly. What you can't take away from me are the skills. I know how to do this game. If you took everything, you could drop me off somewhere else, I would find capital. I would explain what I could do. I would find deals. I could redo it again and again. It made me realize I don't need all this big house. I don't need all these fancy cars. I don't need Rolexes. I don't need all this crap. I'm more driven by the fear of being poor than I am being rich.
Ken, I know part of your story, but you haven't told me really your entire story. How you grew up, when you grew up, where, how was, from childhood? Because I just think it's so much to the journey, right? It's not just who you are today, but how did you become the person that you are today?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my story, but I definitely want to hear yours as well.
Of course.
All right. I was born in Grady Hospital, Atlanta, Georgia. My family was actually from Bangor, Maine. My father was a printer. Mother was a stay-at-home mom. And I was a different kid in the sense that I liked to read at an early age, and I was fascinated by science. I wanted to be a scientist for the longest time. So I was always what you consider a nerd, no doubt. And I moved around a lot. Family even got evicted from one of the apartments I tried to buy, which I thought was funny. But I grew up on Section 8. I lived in the projects. I was definitely bullied for a while. That's when I started getting into martial arts and bodybuilding. I was never a stud, I can tell you that. But I did work out a lot. I did martial arts and things of that nature. But I was always fascinated by reading. And I remember one of the first books I read when I was in 8th grade that really just kind of changed my mindset. And that was called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I still remember, years ago, there's a chapter called Desire, and it's about Edward C. Barnes. And Edward C. Barnes was a vagabond. He was a lowlife, and he had a dream to work with the great Thomas Edison. And all his friends said, "You're nuts. You'll never work for Thomas Edison." So he jumped on a train, went to Edison's factory, and pleaded to have a job. The only job they would give him was to sweep floors. And for several years, all he did was sweep floors. And some of his friends laughed at him, said, "You're a janitor." But as he was there, he was listening. He was studying Edison. He would come home and think about things. And eventually, he had created this dictaphone machine. And Edison was complaining to the salesperson. The salesperson said, "No one wants to buy it." And the janitor was listening, and he says, "I can sell it, Mr. Edison." And Edison turned to him and said, "See, he can sell it. Give him a chance." And he became a multi-millionaire selling this dictaphone application. So when the opportunity came, he was there, but he had to be in proximity to Edison to be able to get that. And the burning desire is lacking in most of us. And I think adversity builds that. So when you grow up in a rough environment, when you grow up where you don't have a lot, when you grow up poor, that adversity builds something in you. When everything's handed to you, you don't appreciate things. And the other thing I think is interesting about it, I went into the military because I wanted out of my home. I had a rough upbringing, and I wanted out of that, so I joined the military. And when I got out of the military, I was kind of culture shocked because they control you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They control every aspect of your day. I felt like the only thing I could think of would be like going to prison because they control every aspect of it. And in the military, they don't reward thinking. They reward you to comply with what they want you to do. And of course, I ask a lot of questions. I'm always just asking questions. And it drove them nuts. And I remember the only people that really liked me were the officers, and they had broken computers, and I knew how to fix computers, self-taught. And I actually had a computer, a Mac computer, and I was using it, and they came in on an inspection, and like, "What's that?" And I was showing it to them, and they were blown away. They were still using typewriters in the Army. And I got to the point where they made me the training NCO, and I was a private, which is unheard of. And of course, I had the best training room because I had a computer. I mean, it's like using AI today was like me using a computer back in the early 90s because it's such an unfair advantage. They were sitting there typing for an hour and a half, and all I had to do was go down and change 2 names and hit submit, and in 5 minutes I had done the same work they were doing in an hour and a half. That is the technological advantage we have now, and I think it's even greater with AI. So that was back years ago, I saw that. So that was something. And then I always had these dreams that I wanted to be rich. I just didn't want to be poor. And I was like, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. And that was one of I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. And I remember working at the grocery store, and the manager, Mr. Cosby was his name, nice guy, and he asked me to clean the bathroom. So I went in there and I cleaned the bathroom. I cleaned areas that the bathroom had never been cleaned before. And Mr. Cosby went in there and he's like, what the hell did you do in here? And I was like, well, you said clean the bathroom. And then before long, I was running the dairy food section. I was running the meat section. I was doing all this stuff because I just kept, whatever it was they gave me, I would just do it. And I didn't know any other way. I was like, well,
excel at it.
Yeah.
You wanted to excel.
Yeah. And anyway, I remember he framed my resume when I gave him, I quit. He took my letter. He said, you're going to be a millionaire. And I was really focused on it. And then I got out of the military, and I started a company called All American Realty. And I thought I had all the answers, and I realized I didn't know anything. I was a complete moron.
So, question here, like, why like a real estate company,
Yep. Uh-huh.
and what was that? I'm trying to figure out, like, based on, like, your upbringing, and also your
Yep.
like what you share so far with me, like why real estate, and what was like something that you did in the past that applied directly to real estate? I'm curious.
Okay. So when I was younger, there was a book called Nothing Down by Robert Allen. And he was the guru of the time. There's another guy named Carlton Sheets, which was another guru. And these were the cassette tapes. I know I'm aging myself here. But if you wanted to be rich, they had these, these patios they were standing in front of their Mercedes and their big mansions and their private jet. It was that whole thing pitching you on it. And I was saying to myself, well, I didn't really understand being an entrepreneur. I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't have the expertise in that. So I said, well, I can figure out real estate. So I got all these books and I devoured all the books. I said, I want to be a real estate. I'm going to be a millionaire buying homes. And I got out of the military. I got my broker's license, and I teamed up with one of my best friends at the time and his dad. And we bought, I think he has like 125 houses now. Well, when I was doing that, I also was selling houses. And I have to tell you, respect to all the agents out there that you definitely don't realize. So the agents, I remember doing this, and it drove me nuts. I would take people to houses and show them houses after houses, and they could never see what I could see. They would always see all the problems, and I said, well, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. But they would only see, well, it's this problem, and that problem, and they would not want to buy the house, and it would drive me nuts. So I said, you know what, I only want to deal with investors, because an investor's understanding can have vision as to what you can do with something. So I did that. That business actually failed spectacularly. Now, he owns a lot of homes and he's a multimillionaire. I didn't become a millionaire from it. I saw an ad in the paper. I needed a place to live. So all I got was a free apartment, nothing else. So when I was there, I said, hey, you're paying $500 a month for landscaping. I could do it for $250 because I was dumb. So I started mowing I got me a mower and stuff, and I was out there mowing the lawn. And then I said, oh, you have another property over here. I can mow that too. I was mowing that one. So I was doing the grounds, mowing, picking the trash up and doing all that stuff. And then I noticed that they were having problems leasing, and they wanted to know, well, how did you lease your property up? And I was like, it's easy. Just answer the telephone. The people want to live here, but they didn't realize that I would answer the telephone at midnight. I would show an apartment. I didn't care. I lived in the place. If you wanted to come see an apartment, I didn't have office hours. Whatever time you wanted to see the apartment, come on over. So I had a lot of people after work because most offices close at 5:30. Well, people are working. How are they going to see? So I was showing units. I'd get a lot of leases at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And people were like, how's he leasing it? Well, that was my secret, is I would just, whatever time they wanted to see it, I'd show them, come on over. And then it had a drug problem. There were a lot of drug dealers, and it had there was like a gang in there. And the other management team, they were terrified of these people.
By the way, what year was this?
This was in 1992, 93, right in there, 92, 93. Yep. By the way, we're using paper ledger cards.
That's why I asked, so I could, kind of like
it was
timestamp it.
Yeah, paper ledger cards. And we had manually write every rent payment. We had the white out if we made a mistake. We had cardboard paper work orders. So there was these drug dealers were in there, and I evicted them. And of course, they went crazy on me. They broke into my apartment. They knew I hated smokers, so they put a big amount of ashes on there. They threw away my records, thinking I didn't have copies of them. I dug them out of the dumpster. But we started a war between me and the drug dealers, And basically, I ended up evicting all of them, and I cleaned the property up and got the property 100%. I got the bad debt down really low, and I also reduced the expenses dramatically. So for me, I was like, this is not hard, because I also have a comparison of the Army. I know what hard work is, and I think it's one of comparison. In the Army, they can work you hours, like 72 hours with no sleep. You're just dragging, and you're hungry, and you're wet, and you're miserable. So that type of process. So anyway, that type of process changes how you look at things. And I used to say, some of the old people at my old companies would know, I would say, can you believe we get paid to do this stuff? This is awesome. And they would look at me like I was crazy. I'm like, this is fun. We're getting paid to do this. This is great. This is easy. Because it's one of comparison. So when you've been in the military and you've been shot at and you've had these terrible experiences, having this experience where like, hey, this is easy to do, it just makes it, I'm like, wow, this is easy. What are you guys complaining about?
Well, I say this, right? One of the biggest differences in mindset is I have to do this versus I get to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing this. 2 years ago, I was at a conference in La Jolla, California.
Uh-huh.
One of the most spectacular places, best climate in the world, top 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing the company that invited me had like their entire staff out there. Everything is paid for, hotel, food, everything. And it's the most gorgeous place ever.
Uh-huh.
And they acted like they don't want to be there.
Yeah.
While me, invited as a guest, for me this was everything.
Yeah.
I said, I can't believe that like I've been invited to this place.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's when, this kind of like dawned on me.
Yeah.
This is the difference between having to do it and I get to be here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to be here. I get to be here. Like, this is incredible that I'm here. And I had the time of my life, and, they didn't. So
Yeah. It's mindset. That's mindset. Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's vantage point and mindset and reframing how you're viewing things. Yeah.
You were listing the heck out of those apartments. what was it next? How did that evolve? What was
Well, so I noticed that they were manually doing the paychecks, and they were really backed up in the accounting department. And I think I talked about this in other podcasts, but I simply said to them, well, there has to be a better way. You guys use computer. And of course they had a computer, but no one had actually used an accounting software. And I went to the Office Depot, and they had something called DAC Easy Accounting. I was like, oh, okay. I said, I can set up your entire accounting stuff. And people say, well, how did you know? Well, I went and bought a book called Accounting for Dummies. And just read it and said, okay, it's not too hard. And I set it all up and started, automating the processes and doing payroll and doing all the accounting for the company as it grew. But the role expanded. The company was growing very fast. The founder was a very driven guy. He was very dynamic, and we worked for the first 4 or 5 years. We worked 7 days a week. I mean, every day we would work. Him and I would meet. We'd go tour the properties on Saturdays and Sundays because offices were open 7 days a week. We would do whatever it took, and that's why when I hear people complain about hard work, I just kind of laugh and say, well, I didn't take a vacation for the first 4 or 5 years, neither did he. So he was a very driven guy, and he grew the business dramatically. I mean, he was very dynamic. He found investors. I always say the hard part about any business like this is you got to first find the investors, then you got to find the deals, and then you got to have the ability to execute. It's those 3 things, and any one of those legs is broken, well, you have lots of processes. So, but the company grew very fast, very quick. We had all sorts of growing pains. I remember one night, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was doing payroll, and we had steam cleaned the carpet, and I plugged in the printer because they'd unplugged the printer, and it shorted the printer out. And I was freaking out because I had to get the payroll checks out. So I had to be at the CompuServe, the computer place, to get the actual new printer, bring it back, rush back in there, plug it in, print the checks out, and make sure they got out. So it was one of those things like, whoa, I realized you had to delegate. And that's something when you're young, you feel like you can do everything better, and you have to learn to delegate. You have to learn to let go. And
so basically pain taught you that?
Yes.
The power of delegation.
Yes. I had no choice. There's no way. I remember saying I could work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and never get the work caught up. So I had to start hiring staff, start building out a department, and it was very much, I had no handbook, there was no guide. We were just figuring it out as we went and grew. And anytime you're growing that fast, you underestimate all the growing pains and the processes that need to be set up, and what worked in one place didn't work in another place, and it was very painful. Yeah, very painful.
And what was your role at the time in a company?
Well, I was
when you started growing in the apartment. What role did you hold?
Yeah, I was the controller, the financial. I was the numbers guy. So I would also do the underwriting on deals. I would do the financial analysis on deals. I would put lender packages together for banks. I would be involved in all paperwork associated with presenting to lenders and banks and investors with Daniel, who was the CEO and founder of the company. And it grew so quick, so fast. We just had to keep hiring and hiring just to keep up with the growth. And the things you don't think about when you're growing a company like that is the amount of working capital is required to grow a company of that size. All the processes, all the systems, everything you think you know. And you hire experts from outside the industry, bring them in, but every company's different. And trying to put that system that worked in that company with that culture in your company, it may not work, it may not be the right fit. So you're constantly learning, and you're breaking stuff and saying, well, this doesn't work, change this, change that. And being open to changing things and learning. And look, I'm not going to say we were perfect. We screwed up so much stuff and we made so many mistakes. And I'm sure I was the source of a lot of them, but I kept asking, well, how can we fix it? How can we make it better? And I always wanted to involve everybody in the team because I always felt like if you did something and you didn't involve like the maintenance guy, get his perspective, you get the leasing agent's perspective, the assistant manager. I wanted somebody from every part of the table sitting there, and I wanted someone vocal, because some people were scared to say something because they might. So I always made it a point to criticize myself.
So you're thinking like a politician. You gotta, those are your constituents,
yeah,
and you gotta get their vote.
Yep.
It's beyond just like, oh, you do this because it's your job.
Yeah.
You're thinking more like, no, how can I get them to be on my side?
That's right.
To buy into the program, what I'm building.
And not only that, but what did I not see? Because it has back to that vantage point. They see something different than I see. I'm at the corporate tower smoking, I used to call it sniffing whiteout, because I would be looking and saying, well, you can easily do this. What's the problem? But you go down to the site level, well, he doesn't know about this, this, and this, and I'm overwhelmed, I got this, and now you're adding something else. And you were talking earlier about new rollouts from corporate and really pushing things. And if you talk to some of the skeptical people, they might say, we call it the flavor of the month club. So corporate comes up with this new initiative for this quarter, and they're going to push this, and they get this under control. And next quarter is something new. Well, what happened to the old one? Well, we got to maintain that too. And the next thing you know, you get 10 flavors of the month, and the on-site team is frustrated, overwhelmed, and I get it. It's hard. So there's these expectations and standards. But I think too, if they see the owner coming and viewing and being engaged and asking questions, and they see you working hard, they at least know. And also, if you're willing to listen and admit your mistakes, most owners won't admit they screw stuff up. They're perfect. I don't make any mistakes. That's your problem. But you have to say, you know what, I'm a human being. I screw stuff up all the time. And anybody who says they don't is full of it. You know they do. They're human, or they're not doing anything. That's a possibility too. They're not doing anything.
We used to have a saying where I'm coming from. Only those who don't do anything, don't break stuff, don't make mistakes.
Yeah. And you have to be honest about it too, and say, well, I screwed this up, and how are we going to fix it? There was one, I had it for the longest time, and I think I've told the story, but it's always a funny story. Daniel went to one of these REITs, and they had these motion sensors in the bathrooms, and he talked about energy efficiency and how much money they were saving because they had these motion sensor activated lights. And he said he wanted it across the entire company, no excuses. I mean, we had sites, 70-something sites. I said, okay, no problem. So I got all the regionals in, I got the VPs in, and I said, okay, we're putting this everywhere. Make this happen. I don't want to hear the excuses. I'm going to be coming out in a month, and I'm going to test these, and we're going to make sure that they're all working, they're all installed. And I'm going to randomly visit different sites. You don't know which ones I'm coming to, but if you're not, you're in trouble. And they're like, okay. So a month comes by, and I go out to the site, and I'm in the bathroom, and all of a sudden the light goes out. I was like, so I shake my hand, and the light comes back on. I said, well, that's strange. So then I walk outside, and I see the manager waving her hand. I said, what are you doing? She goes, oh, the lights pop out if I don't wave my hand every 20 minutes. We installed the wrong light fixtures, the wrong thing. It had a gauge on it. Yeah, they were the wrong ones. So I took one of those, and I put it in a cast, and I set it on my desk because you got to slow down. You got to do research.
As a reminder.
Yes, because you do bonehead things. Like, I was going to do it. I'm a soldier. You tell me this is what the problem is. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the problem over. Take the hill. Not even thinking about all the possibilities that could go wrong, all the issues and everything else. So that lesson burned into my mind. Hey, wait a minute, slow down. Make sure it works. Test all the different variables. Do a beta test. Do a pilot test. Get feedback from everybody. Because you can roll it out and then think about the cost. We had to rip all those out and put new ones in. So wrong, it cost me twice as much. And that's the kind of stuff you see it and you're like, how could you be? Well, I guess what? I accomplished the mission. But did I really? No, I actually just made it worse. And the site was like, Ken, I have to keep waving my hand. We did it because you said do it, but guess what? You're a dummy. Well, you're right, I was.
So, Ken, at peak, how many employees did you have, your organization had?
A little over 700 and I think 23 at one point. Yeah, and 600 some of them reported to me. And it was a big organization. Now, the problem with big organizations is you get the silo effect. And what that means is you have a marketing department, you have a training department, you have an accounting department. And a lot of times what happens is corporate versus the on-site employees. And I always made it a point to tell everybody in the corporate office, you exist to serve the people on the site. Without them, you don't have a paycheck.
True.
But it's so hard to get that mentality.
Your overhead.
Yeah.
All you are your overhead.
That's right.
If those people don't produce, you don't exist.
That's right. But getting that mindset in the people and like listening to them, talk to them. Like, oh, they're an idiot. They're doing this wrong. And I say, stop that. Look, something is wrong with the process if you're having to spend this much time on it. But they're not idiots. Work on fixing the process. Make it better. Make it easier for them. And I would say the same thing over and over to them. Look, you exist to make their lives easier, not the other way around. And it's so hard to get that mindset in. And that's where the incentives come in, the culture comes in, and also the presence of the leadership and being involved and them seeing you out there and knowing that you care. Like, do you even care? Like, do you care that they're screwing stuff up or they're doing something wrong? And them knowing that you care and showing up and saying, hey, this is wrong. We need to fix this. How do we make it better?
You guys, your company lost a lot.
Oh, yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
Almost like everything?
Everything, yeah.
Everything.
No, the company went bankrupt in 2008. So it had $1.5 billion worth of real estate, and it all blew up spectacularly.
Looking back now, what were the blind spots? What got you into that point?
Well, I think there were several, obviously. One is leverage points. Back then, you could get 85% leverage. You could get, in some cases, even higher leverage. And we used very little equity in the deals for the structure because equity was hard to find at the time. Now, Daniel didn't want to go institutional because institutional investors put more equity in and they also are more controlling. Whereas if you get money from 100 different investors, you're the boss. If you get money from one investor, you have a boss. And it's a very different mindset. Being institutional requires much more discipline. You have to be, your reporting has to be tight, your standards have to be correct, and if you have a bunch of 50 grand here or there, high net worth investors, then you have total control, not them. And Daniel wanted total control, and I get that. By the way, that control feature is a function of most owners. They want to control it, and I get that. That's one of the reasons why a lot of them are successful. But it's also, if you're not careful, without anybody questioning that what you're doing and saying, hey, what about this, what about that, having someone to push back on you and say, are you sure, and having that accountability, it's just like, think about working out. If you're by yourself and you're trying to work out, it's different than if you have a trainer and the trainer's saying, hey, you can do more, you did this, and you can get so much more out of somebody, even if you just have a training partner. So I think it's an interesting dynamic about that mindset. So I think definitely too much leverage. I think definitely we should have sold more. I think development had a huge impact. And I remember talking to the CEO about this. The issue has to do with non-recourse and recourse debt. And non-recourse debt means the lender gets the asset. Recourse debt means the lender can come after you personally for the shortfall. And there was a deal, the Sage, and I remember this very clearly. This deal had, it was a beautiful St. Petersburg condo, and we had sold out 100% of it. We had deposits on it. But the fee differential between the recourse and non-recourse debt was like $300,000 or $400,000. And the decision was made, look, let's go recourse because we save almost $500,000 on the deal. And in retrospect, of course, that was stupid. But it's easy to look back because at the time it was blow and go. The money was pouring in. It was incredible opportunities. And it's easy to sit back and armchair quarterback why decisions were made, because what had worked was working spectacularly until it didn't. And I think that's part of the problem. Like right now, there's a lot of huge companies that have said, oh, look how successful we are, pounding their chest, look how great we are. But they haven't really hit a financial storm like 2008. That's a once in a generation type thing. Let's hope so. And if it hits again, you're going to see a lot more people that thought they were on top of the world to find out they're not anymore. And it'll be painful. It always is. There's always people who think they're cocky, they think they've got it, and then they don't realize they didn't properly account for the issues and the concerns, and boom, it blows up. But there were, in any organization, those management gaps. There's also gaps between what the owner thinks is happening and what's actually happening in the real world. And the more successful the company becomes, the more insular the company becomes, because people are telling the owner what they want to hear. They're trying to filter it. Think about all the layers of filtering. You don't want to tell bad news to the owner, so you're filtering it. So unless you have some way to go down and get that bad news, like I always want to know the worst news now. Tell me now so I can fix it. Don't tell me, the good news will take care of itself. It's the bad news that I want to know.
How do you overcome that, Ken?
Direct contact with the people involved, and they have to feel comfortable telling you the truth. And the only way they're going to feel comfortable telling you the truth is if you attack yourself. You say, look, I know I screwed this up. I did this wrong and did this wrong. I'm sure there's some other things I've done wrong. What else can I do to fix it? Tell me, what am I missing? When they see you taking this thing on yourself, they're going to be more likely to say, you know what? He'll level with me. And here's the other critical thing. If they bring something to your attention and you do nothing about it, you have zero credibility with them in the future. Zero. So if they bring 5 or 6 problems to you and you don't do anything, they're going to say, oh, this is just their mouthpiece. They have no respect. And the follow-up for this stuff, so what I would do is I would write things down, and I would just be like a dog with a bone with that particular problem, and I would prioritize them, and I would just go after it until that problem was solved. I'd go on the next one, on the next one. And I would come back and say, here's where we're at. This is what you told me last time. Here's what we're working on. Here's the issue. And if you don't do that, you lose all credibility with your staff. They're like, oh, you just tell him what your problems are, and he says, yeah, and then nothing happens.
When this whole thing happened, what was next for you? Did you leave the company? The company basically ceased to exist, right?
Yeah, well, it was in bankruptcy for a while. I left in 2009 with Christian Shields, my partner. He was chief investment officer, and we started a company in my basement at a very scary time. It was very hard to get anybody to invest. We were going around pitching to people, and no one wanted to invest. Everybody hated real estate. We came from a failed company, and we were pounding the table. The deals were incredible. Now, in fairness, there weren't a lot of deals. It took so when the markets do freeze up, there'll be a period of 8 to 12 months where there's no activity at all, because there's price discovery that needs to happen. People don't know what they should be paying. There's fear, and the fear freezes the market up. There's also, lenders are running, liquidity dries up. So when we get into another true panic, you won't be able to get lenders. You won't be able to find investors. Investors will be terrified. There'll be a handful of, obviously, funds that are designed for this, and people that have done this, and high net worth family offices that have the liquidity to do this and the expertise. But the majority of them will not be able to execute. And it freezes the market up. There won't be a lot of transactions. And there'll be a lot of finger pointing, and you'll see a lot more spectacular flame outs where multi-billion-dollar real estate portfolios are going back to the lenders. And the lenders, of course, are in a real pickle, because they've learned over time just to extend and pretend, work out agreements, because I can tell you right now, the worst operator just about is better than the best lender, because lenders are terrible at running properties. They're not equipped for it.
They're not in a business to do that. Yeah,
that's right.
You're right.
Yeah, they're not equipped for it. And I think a lot of people think that you can just hire a third-party manager and they'll run your property correctly. That is not true. You have got to be involved. This asset management part of running, yes, you can get a third-party manager to do the third-party management processes, but the actual asset management part of it, being involved in the day-to-day decisions, asking the questions, drilling into the information, that is mission critical. That is a core competency of any investor and any person. It's critical, and I can't stress it enough. Asset management is talked about. It's a critical business part, and a lot of companies feel like, oh, you just hired a third-party manager. No, it's not that easy. You have to make sure you have someone asset managing, and that person has to know what they're doing, and understand the questions, and know the games that get played. And dig, because you'll be surprised at what you find. You can take me and drop me off at any management company, and by the way, in my own, and you're going to see mistakes, you're going to see issues. It's a matter of prioritizing and figuring out, this problem, does it really make sense to solve this one, or what's the next one? Because every business has a constraint multiple constraints, and you have to figure out which one you should be attacking first. As you were saying earlier about Cortland, there are many different things you could attack. Which one's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck?
I'm gonna put a pause a little bit to to your story, and I want to talk money, because I think everybody that's going to watch this content, everybody's looking at someone like you, extremely knowledgeable. Like you're kind of like a wealth of knowledge, and also you made it, right? You're a wealthy person. When was the very first time that you felt rich? Like, I had it made. What was that number? Was it 100,000, $500,000, $1 million? What did you feel like the greatest ever?
It's interesting. There's a transition. I remember it very clearly. It wasn't for me to feel rich, and rich is a relative term, obviously. Was when I could go to the bookstore and buy any book I wanted and not worry about the cost of the book. Something simple like that. I think it's very hard to say what rich is, because rich is relative. I'm sure if Bill Gates had my money, he'd shoot himself. So I think it all depends. It's all relative as to what you have. And I think it's an interesting thing about what makes people happy and why people are happy. Definitely, do I have to work? No, but I love to work. So it's a different. I mean, I enjoy this. This is fun for me to go to a property and dig into the issues and try to figure stuff out. I like it. And I don't think I'll ever retire. I'll be 100 years old if I live that long, trying to do deals, trying to figure stuff out, trying to understand how I can make it better, how I can optimize it. It's fun to learn new things, so I enjoy that. I think rich is such a personal thing too, because let me give you an example. You could have somebody who has their family and they're able to go to all the soccer games, they're able to be the soccer coach, and that person, I would argue, is richer than the multi-millionaire who never sees his family, who's strained with his wife, and he's miserable because all he does is work. That guy's richer than the other guy, because that's relative, by the way, if that's what's important to you. Because when you look at the end of when you're in your deathbed, you're not going to look back and say, I wish I had another 2 or 3 million in my bank account, when you could have spent more time with your family or done fun things and really enjoyed it. Or how about this, not take them for granted. Everybody thinks, oh, if I have this and this and this, I'll be happy when this happens. But when they get it, your body has an incredible ability to, in your mind, to just whatever level of stress. Like they've done these studies, people who become crippled, they're in a wheelchair now. They've looked at their happiness level, and after a period of time, however happy they were before, they revert back to that level of happiness, which is fascinating. Like, well, how is that possible? Wouldn't they be miserable? No, your body, you mentally say, okay.
You adjust.
You adjust. You build back to whatever that is. And I just find that's fascinating, how we're doing that. But I think that money, I know it's the big thing, like you show your Porsche, show your Lamborghini, and all this stuff. And I went through that phase where I had the huge house and I had all this stuff. And I realized that I don't need all that.
What changed? I'm curious, what changed? When was that? Was like a moment?
Well, no. So
was there a
definitely,
process?
Yeah, well, that's back when I lost my butt in 2008, obviously, because I thought I was rich, and obviously I was very rich on paper. And then now, of course, I'm a lot more richer in terms of actual liquidity in my bank account. So it's a big difference in terms of net worth and where you're at. But I think that you're humbled when getting humbled by life, like getting kicked in the gut, like thinking you're rich one moment and realizing, oh crap, I'm going to lose everything. That is a sobering experience. And until you've experienced it, like it's one thing to have nothing and want it, but when you get it and then have it taken away, and then it humbles you, because you think you're smart, but you're not smart. You screw stuff up, you make mistakes, and then you realize, wow, I should have thought about this differently. I should have done something different. And there are people that are striving to get that rich, and then the market's going to correct, and they're going to lose most of it, if not all of it, and they're going to be devastated. And if you really love what you're doing and you've developed the skills, see, what you can't take away from me are the skills. I know how to do this game. If you took everything, you could drop me off somewhere else, I would find capital. I would explain what I could do. I would find deals. I could redo it again and again. So that's the secret, is build the skills. And now with AI, I think the AI skill sets are going to be even more important. And those that know how to use AI are going to be able to leverage things that people without AI, I mean, you're superhuman. You can do things that they can't even begin to understand because they don't know what AI could do yet. And I'm always fascinated with that. But yeah, money is an interesting topic. There's a great book, Psychology of Money, by Morgan Housel that I think people should read. There's another book he wrote called The Art of Spending Money, which is another great book. And I think those are great books that people should read, and it'll give you a better perspective on this. But I think to each his own. To each his own.
How did it feel when you saw your bank account reaching $1 million? And how long did it take you to get there? Because I think this is kind of like a number one people wanted to see now. I think it's more like everybody wants to be a billionaire. You know, a million is not enough. But you know, most people don't reach the million. So I want to go to that moment. You know, how did that feel to you?
So the first time I became a millionaire on paper, not my bank account, on paper.
So let's just take the two moments, like on paper and for real in liquidity, because I think you're right. Yeah. There's like two different things.
Yeah, no, on paper, I definitely, when I was 30, I was a multimillionaire, and I was like, wow, I'm rich. But you know, when you think back to it, what made you rich? Well, obviously you have enough to live on, you have enough to pay your bills. If something, your car breaks down, you have a medical emergency or something, you can afford to pay for it. And that is feeling of rich. And then there's when you like get huge checks, like you get these multi-million-dollar checks and you're looking at them saying, wow, and you're putting it in your bank account. And that changes how you feel about, well, wow, I'm rich. But I'll tell you this, I'm more driven by the fear of being poor than I am being rich. And that fear was because I grew up poor. And I definitely believe in minimalism. I don't believe, this is something that definitely getting kicked in your gut. It made me realize I don't need all this big house. I don't need all these fancy cars. I don't need Rolexes. I don't need all this crap. So to be happy, and again, what makes you happy? Like what makes me happy? I like learning new things. I like solving problems. It's fun for me to do this stuff. I like reading. The stuff that I like to do is very low cost. And by the way, solving problems, you can get paid lots of money for it. So it definitely changes your mindset when you're thinking like that. I think that Elon Musk calls it eating glass. And when you start a new company, there's always an eating glass moment. Because at the time, it was 2008, I thought I was rich. I had money, but I didn't have a lot of money. And I put almost all of it into the business. And we were struggling to raise capital. We were struggling to find deals that worked. And there were some periods where we were very concerned that Christian and I weren't taking paychecks because we didn't have enough money to pay ourselves. And we had employees that were depending on us, and we had raised money, and we were struggling. We were really struggling. And but we knew after we got, I think after the second year, we started making real money because we started buying lots of deals, we started making lots of acquisition fees, we started making rehab fees, we started really growing very fast, and then we started having deals where we sold the deals and made money. So it was kind of like just money started pouring in. But the initial part was brutal. No, I'm good, thank you. The initial part was really, really painful. And anybody that starts a business, even if you're well-funded, and I think sometimes being well-funded can backfire because you see this a lot. You see these Silicon Valley startups.
Oh, the tech companies, but our industry is like ridden with that.
Yeah, they burn.
They're just
money.
Everywhere.
Yeah, because they don't have any. It's kind of like your investor's hands on the stove, and you're burning the hell out of their hand, but they don't know it. If your hand was on there, oh shit, I just spent that much. Like I've seen people like debate on these chairs that cost $1,500 for office chairs for tech work. I'm like, are you kidding me? Go get the cheapest chairs you can get. Get the cheapest office space. Keep the costs low. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't have a proven business model yet. What are you doing? But we're going to fake it till we make it. With investors' money? Really? That's what you're going to do? Focus on the customer. Obsession with the customer. Go back to Jeff Bezos. That whole Amazon. He had a damn door frame for his desk. That whole mentality is so critical. And I see the startup culture, and I'm scratching my head. These investors are giving them money, and look at some of these massive companies. They have Gulfstream jets, and they don't have cash flow. Why does the founder of a startup, even though it's a multi-billion-dollar revenue, but they don't make any money, why does he need a Gulfstream? Why? That's ridiculous.
So what I'm really fascinated about, because I'm seeing very similar things too. Like, why are people keep giving them money? Is it like too much supply, and then people don't have anywhere else to invest, and they're just kind of like it's kind of like betting on a horse, right? Having a bunch of money, and you pick like 10 horses, and like one is gonna hopefully make you a lot of money, and it doesn't matter if the other 9 lose everything.
Yeah, so that's the venture capital model. So the issue is you don't know which eccentric founder has the ability to become the next Elon. And if you could identify them, which reliably there's not a great way, some companies think they figured it out, but even if they figured it out, they're going to invest in 10 deals, and 8 or 9 of them are going to be, and several of them are going to lose everything, and one of them may return all the investment and then some, and that's how the returns work. They're asymmetric in nature. As long as the hype's around, people are going to keep pushing and pushing money into these techs. Like right now, it was an article in the Wall Street Journal this weekend. They're now funding their living expenses. So kids, they make them quit college. They quit college. They give them a place to live, and they give them a stipend, and they're building a product. Now, I would argue those kids are giving away way more equity than they should, because if they really do hit it, that's very expensive equity. In any business that is starting, should be focused on profitability immediately. Now, I know that's contra to what most of the tech founders do. They want to get eyeballs. They want to grow rapidly, and they lose millions and millions like Amazon. But what's interesting about Amazon, I'm sure if Jeff Bezos optimized for profitability in the very beginning, he could have been very profitable after so many years. But he was also growing at a tremendous rate, and he was reinvesting all the money back into those different fields he was growing in. And what most people don't realize is that Amazon, right now, the bulk of their profits come from their web servers division. That's their highest margin business. It's not all the online sales, it's the web server, which is crazy, which basically Jeff Bezos said, hey, we have all this excess capacity, let's turn it into a business. And that is their number one profit driver right now. Kind of interesting.